Ladies, I've come to speak to your heart today. I'm not talking about worldly intelligence alone. No, I'm speaking about something deeper, a divine wisdom, a sacred intelligence that goes beyond textbooks, beyond job titles, beyond applause. The world may define smart by how many degrees you have, how much you earn, or how fast you can solve a puzzle. But I'm here to tell you there's a higher kind of wisdom. A wisdom that's built in fire, refined in silence, proven in storms. If you carry these 7 signs, then know you are not just a smart woman, you are a wise woman, a woman of purpose, a woman of impact, a woman chosen to shake the ground she walks on. A truly smart woman is not the loudest in the room, nor is she always the first to speak. Her intelligence lies in her ability to listen, deeply, patiently, and with intention. While others rush to be heard, she leans in to understand. She knows that wisdom is not proven by how quickly you can offer an answer, but by how carefully you observe what's being said and what's left unsaid. In conversations, she isn't formulating her response while the other person is speaking. She's not distracted by how she'll appear or how clever she can sound. No, she is fully present, listening not just with her ears, but with her heart. This kind of listening requires strength, not weakness. It means she has tamed her ego. It means she doesn't need to dominate a discussion to feel valuable. She recognizes that listening is a form of power, and she doesn't just listen to people. She listens to life. She listens to her intuition when something feels off. She listens to silence when the world gets too loud. She listens to lessons hidden in pain. While others are chasing answers, she waits. She discerns. She reflects. You see, the smart woman doesn't interrupt because she knows wisdom takes its time. She's not in a rush to impress because she's grounded in who she is. Her intelligence isn't based on being the most vocal, but on being the most aware. She notices what others miss. She hears what others ignore. And in doing so, she gains an advantage that no degree or diploma can offer: understanding. This understanding is what guides her in friendships, in work, in love, in faith. She picks up on tone, body language, and hidden meanings. She has the kind of emotional intelligence that allows her to navigate tough situations with grace. She asks questions that cut through the noise. She can sit in a room full of conflict and still remain calm because she has trained her soul to listen before she speaks. And when she does speak, her words carry weight, not because she's trying to prove anything, but because they come from a place of reflection. Her thoughts are not rushed. They are refined. And those around her recognize this. They lean in when she talks because she has a reputation for saying things that matter. This is not weakness. This is power. Power that comes from patience. Power that comes from knowing you don't have to compete to be significant. She understands that every moment is a chance to learn, and she never stops learning. That is why she's ahead, even when others can't see it yet. There's a vast difference between reacting and responding, and a truly smart woman knows the line between the two. She has grown through experiences that have taught her not to let her emotions hijack her decisions. Life has tested her patience, bruised her pride, and challenged her self-control. And instead of letting those moments break her, she allowed them to refine her. She no longer gives away her power to every situation that upsets her. She doesn't let her peace be stolen by every rude comment, sudden change, or unexpected blow. Instead, she pauses. She breathes. She considers. Then she responds with clarity and calm. Her intelligence shows not just in what she says, but in what she chooses not to say. She has learned that every situation does not deserve her energy. She doesn't throw her words around carelessly because she knows how powerful they are. Where others might lash out in anger, she remains still, not because she's weak, but because she's wise enough to understand the cost of careless reactions. She understands that emotional maturity is not about suppressing emotions, it's about mastering them. She feels deeply, but she has learned to filter those feelings through truth and purpose. She no longer allows temporary emotions to destroy permanent relationships. She doesn't let one bad moment define her day. She understands that reacting in haste often leads to regret, and regret is a burden she's no longer willing to carry. So she thinks, she pauses, she observes, and when she finally does respond, it is with strength that is tempered by grace. This woman is not passive, she is powerful. Her restraint is not silence but strategy. Her calmness is not indifference but inner confidence. She understands that not everything deserves a fight, and not every offense needs a reply. She chooses her battles, and more often than not, she chooses peace. Not because she's afraid to confront, but because she's wise enough to know when confrontation is fruitful and when it is futile. She walks through conflict with poise, navigating tense conversations and hard truths with dignity. She doesn't let other people's chaos pull her out of character. She doesn't mirror anger with anger or sarcasm with sarcasm. Instead, she becomes a mirror of wisdom, reflecting back thoughtfulness, maturity, and calm. She becomes the stabilizing presence in any room, and those around her feel that energy. They notice her steady spirit, her clear mind, her intentional words. This discipline was not born overnight. It was carved through disappointments, losses, misunderstandings, and years of learning. But now she carries it like armor. It protects her from manipulation. It shields her from guilt. It frees her from reacting out of insecurity. She doesn't need to prove herself in every moment because she has already proven herself to herself. And that's the kind of intelligence that can't be faked or forced. It's real, it's earned, and it sets her apart. A smart woman understands the rare and sacred power of walking away. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in strength. She knows when a space no longer serves her peace, when a conversation is no longer worth her voice, when a connection has drained more than it has given. She has spent time in places where she tried to prove her worth, begged to be understood, over-explained her intentions, and tolerated behaviors that wounded her spirit. But with wisdom, she has learned that staying in places where she is constantly shrinking is not loyalty, it is self-abandonment. So she walks away, not because she doesn't care, but because she finally does about herself. She has realized that not every situation deserves a front row seat in her life. Not every friend is meant for the full journey. Not every job is a sign of purpose. She has stopped making excuses for the red flags she used to paint white. She no longer sacrifices her peace to make others comfortable. She has learned that her value is not up for debate, and her worth is not a currency she needs to trade for approval. When respect leaves the room, so does she, quietly, gracefully, and without the need for dramatic exits. Her intelligence is revealed in the choices she makes to protect her heart, her energy, her time. She doesn't cling to what's familiar out of fear. She understands that walking away is not failure. It is freedom. It is a sign of evolution. It means she no longer needs to fix what is unwilling to change. She knows the cost of staying in the wrong place is too high. It drains her creativity, dulls her joy, and delays her destiny. So she chooses herself, not in a selfish way, but in a sacred way. She refuses to negotiate her worth in environments that refuse to recognize it. She has walked away from arguments that go in circles, from relationships that were one-sided, from roles that limited her growth. And in every departure, she has reclaimed a piece of her power. The world may call it quitting, but she calls it clarity. She doesn't slam the door behind her. She closes it with intention, understanding that not everything that once fit still belongs. Some chapters are meant to end. Some ties are meant to be cut. Some endings are actually beginnings in disguise. She walks away with her head held high, not looking back with regret, but moving forward with purpose, because she knows that whatever is meant for her will never require her to lose herself to keep it. She trusts that by releasing what no longer serves her, she makes space for what truly aligns with her soul. That kind of discernment, that kind of strength, that kind of wisdom, it's not something you learn in books. It's earned in the valleys of life through lessons that broke her open, only to build her stronger. She doesn't fear being alone because she knows the difference between loneliness and solitude. In solitude, she meets herself again. In silence, she finds her answers. She knows that a woman who is not afraid to walk away is a woman who has already found her way. A smart woman values growth more than she values comfort, and that truth sets her apart in a world where many choose the easy road. She understands that nothing extraordinary ever happens in the safety of the comfort zone. While others seek to stay where it's familiar, where it's predictable, where it's easy, she leans into the discomfort that comes with evolving. She knows that growth is often uncomfortable, messy, and uncertain, but she welcomes it because she would rather be stretched than stuck. There were seasons in her life when she had to make hard choices, to leave behind old patterns, outdated beliefs, and even people who couldn't come with her. Those choices weren't easy, but she made them because something inside her refused to settle. She could no longer ignore the quiet whisper that said, "There is more in you." She felt the nudge, the divine discomfort, and she didn't run from it. She leaned in. She knew that real growth meant letting go of the version of herself that played small, that stayed silent, that sought validation. And so she shed those layers even when it hurt. She chooses growth in her mindset. She is not content with the knowledge she has. She keeps learning, unlearning, and relearning. She reads. She listens. She reflects. She welcomes constructive criticism, not as an attack, but as a tool for refinement. She asks hard questions of herself. She's not afraid to admit when she was wrong, because she sees correction not as shame, but as a stepping stone. That humility is rare, and it's one of the things that makes her shine. Her intelligence doesn't need applause. It demands expansion. She chooses growth in her emotional life. She has sat with her pain long enough to learn from it. She has cried in private, wrestled with her shadows, and still chosen healing over hiding. She has forgiven not because it was easy, but because she refused to let bitterness control her story. She confronts her inner wounds, not to dwell in the past, but to be free for the future. She has done the work to know herself, really know herself, and that self-awareness gives her power. She doesn't walk through life numb. She walks through it awake. She chooses growth in her relationships. She no longer entertains surface-level connections. She seeks depth, authenticity, mutual respect. She knows that who she surrounds herself with will either sharpen her or shrink her, so she chooses wisely. She's not afraid to outgrow people. She blesses them and releases them. She understands that every connection has a season, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step away and grow separately. She also chooses growth in her spiritual life. She doesn't just live by feelings, she lives by faith, She trusts that even in seasons where nothing makes sense, something is happening within her. She surrenders her comfort to the process, knowing that God doesn't waste pain. Her steps are ordered even when they're steep, and she knows deep down that the most beautiful things in her life will be born from moments when she said yes to growth and no to comfort. This kind of woman doesn't need easy, she needs real, she needs deep, she needs meaningful. And when she has to choose between what feels good and what makes her good, she chooses the fire because she knows the fire won't destroy her. It will refine her. That is the power of a woman committed to growth. That is the mark of true intelligence. The willingness to become, over and over again. Now's what it feels like to be overlooked, to be underestimated, to be talked down to. And so she makes it her mission not to repeat that cycle with others. When she sees another woman win, she claps, genuinely, because she knows there is no shortage of success, no lack of room at the table. She's not threatened by excellence, she's inspired by it. And when she sees someone struggling, she doesn't gossip, she helps. She sends the encouraging word, the open door, the silent prayer. She understands that legacy isn't built on how far you rise, but on how many others rise with you. Her intelligence is shown in how she creates community, not division. She's not insecure about someone else's beauty, talent, or progress. She's not afraid to compliment or mentor or stand in the background while someone else shines. That's because she knows who she is. And when you're rooted in your identity, you don't feel the need to tear others down to build yourself up. She lives with the deep understanding that we rise by lifting others, and that the greatest strength is shown in how gently we treat others on the way up. She's also intentional. She reaches out, builds bridges, opens space for others to grow. She's not afraid to say, "You inspired me," or "How can I support you?" Her wisdom shows in her humility, in the way she's willing to learn from others, regardless of age, background, or status. She doesn't have to be the smartest person in the room. She just wants to be someone who adds value to the room. And so she lifts, not for applause, not for recognition, but because she remembers what it felt like to need lifting. She has no tolerance for mean-spirited competition. She won't waste her energy trying to outshine anyone. Her light is steady, and it's rooted in purpose, not performance. She encourages younger women. She stands with older women. She defends those who are unheard. She believes in unity because she knows divided women are defeated women. But united women, they are unstoppable. Her life becomes a safe space for others, a place where people feel seen, heard, encouraged. That's no accident. That's wisdom. That's growth. That's what happens when a woman no longer lets fear, comparison, or pride dictate how she treats others. Instead, she chooses kindness. She chooses connection. She chooses to be the reason someone else didn't give up. And in that choice, she becomes more than smart. She becomes a builder, a pillar, a light, the kind of woman who doesn't just succeed, but multiplies success in everyone around her. That is a brilliance no test score can measure, the brilliance of a woman who lifts. A smart woman knows, beyond any shadow of doubt, that her worth comes from within. It is not something she has to earn, prove, perform for, or beg others to acknowledge. Her value is not attached to her appearance, her relationship status, her income, or the number of followers she has. It is not fragile, and it is not up for negotiation. It is deeply rooted, grounded in something eternal, unshakable, and sacred. She no longer allows others to define her, label her, or measure her based on temporary standards. She knows who she is, and that knowing is her power. This understanding didn't come overnight. There was a time she doubted herself, a time she looked to others for validation, for someone to tell her she was enough, smart enough, pretty enough, worthy enough. She tried to mold herself into what others expected. She twisted her truth to avoid rejection. She hustled for approval, but eventually she grew tired of the masks, tired of the performance, tired of handing her identity to people who didn't even know how to carry it with care. And so she began the quiet, courageous work of coming home to herself. She stripped away the false beliefs one by one. She faced the wounds that made her question her value in the first place. She stood in the mirror and declared, "I am enough as I am, not because the world says so, but because I know it deep in my soul." And from that day forward, she stopped shrinking. She stopped apologizing for taking up space. She stopped comparing her journey to anyone else's. She owned her story, the beauty and the brokenness. She embraced her imperfections. She honored her voice. This kind of self-worth isn't loud, but it's unshakable. It doesn't need to prove anything, it simply is. And that quiet confidence changes the way she walks into rooms. She no longer looks for permission to belong. She brings belonging with her. She doesn't chase people who don't value her because she values herself enough to walk away. She doesn't tolerate disrespect in relationships because she knows love without respect isn't real love. She doesn't settle in her dreams, her friendships, or her purpose because settling is the language of someone who's forgotten their value, and she never will again. She wears confidence like a crown, not one made of arrogance, but of deep inner knowing. And it affects everything: how she dresses, how she speaks, how she carries herself. People may not always understand her, but they will feel her presence. They will feel the strength of someone who is no longer searching for something that already lives inside her. That is the mark of a woman who has done the work, who has chosen healing, who has found her worth in stillness, not noise, in truth, not trends. And so she becomes immovable. She doesn't crumble when someone criticizes her. She doesn't fall apart when things don't go as planned. She doesn't lose herself in the crowd. She stands tall, firm, and free because her identity isn't fragile, it's forged. Forged in fire, forged in solitude, forged in sacred revelation. And so if you see yourself in these words, even just a glimpse, know this: you are not ordinary. You are not average. You are not here to merely exist, to shrink, to be silenced. You are here to rise. You are here to walk in wisdom, in strength, in clarity, in purpose. The smart woman is not defined by how loud she is or how many accolades she holds. She is defined by how deeply she knows herself, how boldly she lives her truth, and how faithfully she honors the journey that shaped her. Let the world say what it will. Let critics come and go. Let circumstances shift. But let one thing remain unshaken: your awareness of who you are and what you carry. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more women who are rooted. More women who are not afraid to walk away, to grow, to lift others, and to shine without shame. So hold your head high, not in pride, but in quiet certainty. You don't need to chase validation. You are the validation. You don't need permission to take your place. You are the place. And when you walk in that truth, you don't just change your life. You give every woman watching you the courage to rise and do the same. That is the power of a truly smart woman. And if that's you, don't you ever forget it.